Well, at first blush last Friday, the United States Supreme Court issued a one-paragraph decision on an emergency application that turned the world of due process upside down. But buried within it, in the dissent of Justice Sotomayor, was a little, let's call it an Easter egg. It was an invitation to the federal judge, Judge Murphy up in Massachusetts, not to disobey the Supreme Court and its decision that notice doesn't have to be given to people before they're sent to third-party countries. But the judge had another order. He had another order after that was blocked by the Supreme Court, a remedial measure, a remedial order to support his power and his authority and his power of contempt finding. And that was not blocked by the Supreme Court. So he gathered everybody together and he told them, I don't need to comply with the United States Supreme Court. And that led Donald Trump to go crazy and file something with the United States Supreme Court. We break it all down for you on the midweek edition of Legal AF. And here's a clip. Let's start with, or we're going to wrap it up here in the home stretch. Supreme Court makes a ruling last Friday. Ben and I talked about it on the Saturday edition. But when I was putting together the list for today, earlier, I was thinking, we're just going to have to talk about, that case, the lack of silver lining in which the Supreme Court in one paragraph effectively turned due process on its head and is allowing people to be deported and removed to third world countries without notice and really effective due process over an injunction of Judge Murphy in Massachusetts. He's the same judge that has already found that the Trump administration had violated his injunction, had continued to send people to South Sudan and to Libya, of all places. Now the Trump administration, not now, is offloading to countries that don't share our values. That's the thing that sticks in my craw the most. He's not sending it to like European countries, well, they're sent to Germany today. I'd be like, all right, well, at least they're in Germany, but they're sending them to places that don't share our values, our constitutional values, our justice values at all. Quite the opposite. These people are in fear of being tortured, killed, or worse in these countries. And that's why even the immigration laws say you can only deport people to where they're from or where they are willing to go. And if you're sending them to a third country that they don't want to go to, there has to be a process around that. But the Supreme Court, off an emergency application, off of Judge Murphy's injunction from April, said, it's interesting, but we're going to let them continue to do that while we wait around for the full-blown merits appeal to come back up to us maybe a year from now. We're like, what? And then Sotomayor writes this scathing dissent. And in it, there was a curious line. I read it. I kind of read over it. And in it, it said, I'm paraphrasing, this order does not, and our jurisdiction does not address the remedial orders of the trial judge, of the judge below. I was like, interesting. And I kind of blew it off. But you know who didn't blow it off? Judge Murphy. Because when you go back to the docket for his case, and he's the guy that found not only a violation by Donald Trump, but he's the one that made the Trump administration hold at an Air Force base in Djibouti 8 Libyans and not deport them until they get due process, keeping them on U.S. soil at an Air Force base. And he's pissed off. And he said, I'm not ready to find contempt yet, and issued a remedial order a month later in May, in which he said, you are, as part of the remediation for violating my prior order, you are to do the following, which is don't deport anybody, keep them on U.S. soil until I get around to deciding whether you have the grounds to do it, and notice has been given properly, and due process has been given properly. And he said on Monday, after reading the Supreme Court decision, nothing's changed. It did not enjoin my May 21st remedial order, nor does it divest me of jurisdiction. So nothing's changed. So why don't you take it from there, Karen? What did the Trump administration do about that?
Well, what do you think? They, again, ran to mommy and daddy, the Supreme Court of the United States, and basically said, basically is trying to get the situation clarified and asking for clarity about whether or not this applies to them. And, look, it's just they're of course, once again, attacking everybody under the sun. John Sauer, the Solicitor General, said this is a lawless act of defiance that once again disrupts sensitive diplomatic relations and slams the brakes on the executive's lawful efforts to effectuate third country removal. He asked for an immediate stay to make clear beyond any doubt that the government can immediately proceed with these third country removals. The White House is basically attacking Judge Murphy and other judges as usual. And of course, while all this is happening, by the way, and Stephen Miller is saying, the Stephen Miller, who seems to be the architect behind all of this, says, quote, expect fireworks tomorrow when we hold this judge accountable for refusing to obey the Supreme Court. I mean, if that's not a veiled threat. And of course, what does Donald Trump say about all this? Well, I'm not really sure what's going on around here. I know nothing about the situation, right? And then he says, oh, but it's out of control. The situation's out of control, but I don't really know a lot about it, which is sort of his go-to answer with these kind of difficult things that he doesn't want to really wade into. So that's what's going to happen. And meanwhile, you've got these 8 men sitting on, in this country that kind of in purgatory, right? Waiting to go and see what happens to them. But that's kind of what's happening.
Yeah, and I think they lose because, as I said on a hot take about this, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. You go in with a half-assed emergency application, limited briefing, limited record, no oral argument to clear up these issues. You get a 1-paragraph decision that appears on face value to be in your favor, but Sotomayor circulated her dissent, and nobody from the majority in a statement, which is what they use nowadays for these granting the stays. Nobody said she was wrong about the remedial measures, the jurisdiction of the court, because just like Judge Breyer in San Francisco about the California National Guard still has jurisdiction over new temporary restraining orders, new preliminary injunctions on new evidence, and the Posse Comitatus Act, he's not divested of jurisdiction just because the appellate court has blocked a temporary restraining order. Same thing here. But they don't like it. So now they want to supplement their briefing and try to get new argument and try to get 4 votes or 5 votes from the 6 that ruled in their favor to clarify. I'm not sure the Supreme Court clarifies on this because there's not much to clarify. Yeah. They saw Sotomayor's dissent. They didn't challenge it. They didn't say, well, she's wrong on that issue. We're blocking the whole case, all of the orders. This is about the powers of a federal judge wearing a black robe with lifetime appointment to administer justice in their courtroom using their inherent authority. This has nothing to do with the United States Supreme Court blocking one of those orders, especially when there's another order that happened after it. And a pox on Trump's house because they should have brought a more fulsome appeal about orders that related to the original injunction, but they didn't. And so it wasn't up before the United States Supreme Court. And if it's not there and it's not in the record and it's not properly briefed, the Supreme Court doesn't have the power to rule on it. They should lose on this. There should be crickets, no clarification at all. And then they can try to appeal the remedial order on another emergency application, but that has to do with the power of a federal judge to enforce his own orders.
Exactly. I mean, you're assuming people here are going to play by the rules, right? I mean, that's why the story we talked about earlier that you were talking about in this confirmation hearing with Emil Bove is so significant because part of what he's being accused of is basically telling the members of the Department of Justice to basically say F you to the courts and to not abide by the court order. So even if the court says this is what you have to do, that he is accused of saying that. And there's this little colloquy between Adam Schiff and Emil Bove. Schiff said, did you suggest telling the courts, fuck you in any manner? ? Bove, I don't recall. Schiff, you just don't remember that? In my experience, the answer to a question like this is either yes or no. And we all know which of those I don't recall is. I mean, that's pretty
I don't recall.
astounding. That's what he said. I don't recall. That's astounding.
That's an admission that it happened.
Of course it is. Of course it is. It was in a room full of people. There's no way you can deny that. And if that's really coming, he's the number 3 in the Department of Justice. That couldn't come more from the top. If that's really what the Trump administration is telling the rank and file of the Department of Justice, is to just ignore court orders. Because everything you just said, Popok, is 100% right and 100% just completely accurate. But that's assuming everybody's willing to play by the rules and everybody's willing to abide by the rules. I mean, that's why people always say, democracy is so fragile, because democracy depends on all of us agreeing to abide by the rules, even the ones we disagree with. It's not the reason there's no lawlessness in the streets is not because of any law enforcement or laws, et cetera. It's because we all have this social construct, this compact that we're all going to abide by the rules, whether we agree with them or not. This is the first time in my life that coming from the top, coming from the administration, coming from the federal government, they are basically saying, sorry, it's my way or the highway. I'm not going to abide by the rules that I don't like. That is why our democracy is so fragile and why this authoritarianism government that is coming forward is really so terrifying to all of us. And so that's why, Popok, when we talk about these things, they're all interrelated because they're all pointing to the same thing. They're all pointing to where we are headed as a country and as a democracy. And that's why I love doing this with you every single Wednesday, and why I think the work that the Midas Touch Network is doing and Legal AF is so important, because we have to keep really shining a bright light on what's happening here.
Yeah, I agree. The social contract is in tatters around the feet of Donald Trump, and that's a scary place to occupy, because we do keep this together as that's what a nation of laws, not men, means. That means that laws are on a book, and they have to be abided by because you want your neighbor to do it, and you want to contribute that to the social cause. When I was talking to Sky Perryman today, she said her Democracy Forward is representing the JGG class action in front of Judge Boasberg. And I said, well, you saw the whistleblower letter by Mr. Ravenny. What are you going to do about it? And, I didn't want to put her, I said to her, if you can't tell me because you're working on it, it's confidential. I totally understand that, but I know you're involved. And she had a good comment. She said, it's new information, but not something that the judges like Zinnes and Boasberg didn't already suspect. They just now have the proof that's necessary. I mean, if I'm the judges, I make referrals to the bar associations for disbarment. I call these people in. Drew Ensign needs to come in. He was the lawyer that's still there, that's running around between Boasberg's courtroom and Zinnes's courtroom, and answer for it, because Ravenny threw Ensign under the bus and said he's been lying in court. I mean, there's no other way to put this. And we'll see if this scuttles. There's many, many reasons why Emil Bovey should not be a circuit court judge or get anywhere near it. There's right-wing conservatives that don't believe that he should be a judge, and that he's temperamentally and mentally unsuited to have that role. And they've come out against Bovey and against Donald Trump, including those that would be considered, this is one of the things that started the fight with the Federalist Society, is that major people in the Federalist Society were coming out against Bovey, and Donald Trump would stand for it, or Bovey. But we're going to watch that. We'll do some hot takes on that confirmation hearing. Welcome back. We do a full version. It's an hour long every Wednesday and Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, only on the Midas Touch Network. And then we bring it over here on Legal AF and other places, including ad-free versions. We sit at the intersection of law and politics so you don't have to. We call that the After Dark edition. Look at my glasses. If you know everything about Legal AF, you're already part of our audience. We really do appreciate you. If you haven't heard about the Legal AF podcast, been around for about 5 years. We do it twice a week, as I just said. And we do these Legal AF updates on Legal AF, the YouTube channel. Take a moment, download the audio, watch the video. We just got the new rankings in. Legal AF, the podcast number 46 in the world of all podcasts on the on the YouTube rankings. And that's all because of you, and we appreciate it. So until my next report on Legal AF, I'm Michael Popok. I'm Michael Popok, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touch's Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popok Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popok Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok Firm today at 1-877-POPOK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopokfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popok Firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.